So I will give, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes to each panelist to present, and then afterwards I will have a few questions for them. An exchange between them will happen, and of course I'll open for questions to the audience quickly after. So maybe we should start with Ernest.
Okay, so first of all, is my audio on? You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you're inviting me to say a few things.
Yeah. 5 to 7 minutes, Ernest.
Okay, well, I thought I would just be very brief at the beginning.
Okay.
Because I have a video to share later that will take up some of my time, but I'm representing Smart Settle in British Columbia, and we are focusing on collaboration systems for dispute resolution and other formal negotiations. You know, a wide range of applications, all the way from simple small claims to complex family disputes, and even negotiations between nations. I should say that the latter is still in the simulation stage, but we're tackling that as well. So I just thought I would just give that brief introduction and then turn it over, and I'll share a video later that will give you a better idea of what Smart Settle is about later.
Okay, thank you. Darren?
Is the PowerPoint in here?
Yeah.
I'm quite positive they told me that I had 18 minutes to do my presentation, so I am willing to negotiate down to 12.
No, you can take 12.
We'll meet from there, please. Please make sure the sound is enabled on that one. So very quickly to introduce myself, my name is Darren Gingras. That's a good Quebecois name, huh? And I'm from Toronto. We are involved with a company called CST Dispute Resolution Technologies, which, just so you know, is actually a company that originally comes out of, I guess I'm controlling it. Which originally comes out of an existing family mediation process. We established about a decade and a half ago. We were very fortunate. We tapped into a Canadian financial influencer celebrity, and we created a process that was really predominantly about quicker, cheaper, amicable processes. I do tell people, just so you know, I do not come to family law because I've gone through a nasty, bitter divorce. I've been married 30 years. My wife looks at me and says, why on earth would I divorce you and take half? It's only a matter of time until I get it all the way you work. So we've been working in family law. We've been developing processes. And to be very honest, right from the beginning, we found the process to have its own challenges. Family mediation was something that we were very interested in. Family mediation was something that we were really wanting to innovate, but family mediation, family law is profoundly complex. And it was something that we really struggled with. It was complicated people, complicated processes, complicated laws, complicated clients, complicated financials. There was nothing about it that really was straightforward. So we really had to do a lot of thinking. The complexities of family law, arguably, even though I am quite convinced we have some of the best professionals in the province who are working with us, there was a trade-off in the way that we were understanding family mediation, at least at that point. There was a trade-off when it came to complexities. There was a trade-off with the complexity of files over, for instance, the value of assets that we could deal with, limitations when it came to acrimony on files. Frankly, our family mediation processes were ripe for human error. They were ripe for misunderstanding. And it was incredibly difficult to standardize. When we were building this as a business model, we were looking for something that we could standardize, and it was incredibly difficult. We couldn't centralize it. We simply had to have a new location when it came to things for signing. We had to hire some of the most expensive professionals. When you really think about it, the people that work in a family mediation process are not cheap. billable hours, $400, $500 an hour just for lawyers, but throw in their financial advisors and professionals, tax people when you're throwing in therapists, counselors, incredibly expensive processes to be able to do. And as well, processes themselves were incredibly difficult. ILA, the bane of existence to any family mediator, is independent legal advice. And there was no standardized process. We really did for every we had 7 office locations in Toronto, in Greater Ontario. We had to have 2 ILA lawyers in every location, had to throw a 3rd one in there just to deal with conflict of interest issues. So there was no standardization of processes, and very honestly, by about 2017, we were starting to see the clients complain. We thought we were all kinds of vinegar and piss, but the reality is clients were complaining. And we were struggling to really address the real issues that were going on. We had to stop, and it was about 2017 that we really sort of had one of those days. It was this time of year, everything had sort of hit, the perfect storm. Those clients were complaining, the ILA lawyers were complaining, the process was complaining, we were having troubles with this one, we had to stop. And it was a team meeting saying, find us technology to address what was going on. And we did, we found that technology that simply allowed us to deal with everything with books and booking and tracking and all of those things, but we really couldn't find that technology that would assist us with some sort of negotiations. What really helped us is when we had that moment where I had a daughter that needed to return a phone on eBay, and I was introduced to their online processes with dispute resolution on eBay. And I remember phoning them up going, what the hell is this? And they're telling me this entire story. I remember they're saying to me, you've got to talk to this guy named Colin Rowe. So we did. We flew down to San Francisco, and we had a chance to speak with Colin and their team, and they put a fire in us. And we went home and spent the next months trying to look at what it is that we were doing and could we do it in a different way. And the first thing that we had to do was to take a look at the process that we were actually working with. We had understood, as did most people, that family law and certainly divorce was about a legal process that somehow started with a legal process and ended in a legal document. But this was really not our experience. Our experience is that family law looks a lot more like this. And we were seeing that the complexities that we call family law were everywhere. Our research was showing that clients were going into family law processes or researching divorce 5 to 7 years before they actually contacted anybody. And the process of family law was extending 5 to 7 years after they had signed their separation agreement. And the reason is because family law wasn't just about the document. That's not what we were addressing. The dispute wasn't just about the document. The dispute was about mortgages. The dispute was about children. The dispute was about going back to work. The dispute was about new houses. Houses had to be sold, houses had to be bought. Throw in a girlfriend and there's an extra one in there. It was drama everywhere that we went. And the process was profoundly convoluted. It was complicated, it was convoluted, and even as we were looking at the process, we were really struggling to understand exactly what it is that we were trying to focus on. The highest paid professional in a family law process is not the lawyer, it's the real estate agent. We had clients that were going through processes, and in the midst of a family law process, they were paying mortgage penalties of $75,000 before they were doing anything else. People were spending outrageous money, let alone talking about what was going on in their family law process. We knew we needed to start all over again. And with that one, we decided that legal dispute resolution that we needed to focus on wasn't just a legal process that we wanted to address, it was a juncture. It was an ecosystem that we really need to be considering of how we were going to address. We were also concerned that we were not listening to the market. Now you have to understand, I'm not an academic, I don't pretend to be. I'm a businessman, my background's financial. But we did know what we were seeing, and the market was not going where we were going. And I wish I could sit there and say the entire market was working towards mediation or family dispute resolution processes. We saw the market was moving away from traditional processes more towards do-it-yourself processes, if anything, and we just weren't really sure if that's what we were addressing, and if so, how were we addressing that market? So first off, as I say and want to talk about our ODR, I do need to talk about what we don't do. We are not interested in quickie divorces. We do complicated files. We do pensions, we do kids, we do parenting plans, we do separation of assets, we do taxes, we do revenues. We deal with separation and support and alimony and all those things. So we don't do quickie divorces. We're not about that. What we are interested in is figuring out how technology could change the way that we were dealing with those processes. We wanted to know if technology could minimize drama. We wanted to know if technology could minimize dispute. And we wanted to know if technology could get us through a process. So we were really looking at the complexity of processes. We were trying to figure out if dispute resolution technologies could actually accomplish a purpose that was more than just generating a separation agreement. We really were not interested in an AI-generated separation agreement. It just didn't speak properly to what it is that we were trying to address. So we went back and took a look at our business goals. And our goals really was about standardizing a business model as family dispute resolution process, more about that journey over the conclusion. We're really about addressing the real issues that were going on in the family law process. It wasn't about that final separation agreement. We're also looking for tech efficiencies. Could this dispute resolution technology actually help us to minimize, bypass, resolve disputes before we even got into them? And frankly, this is my thing. It had to be a sustainable business model. One of the things that just drives me crazy is everybody's running around doing whatever, but there's no sustainable business model, so it's a lot of poof, and then it's gone a year later. So we really wanted to address the way that we were looking at our processes. And for us, that meant creating a platform called ODIN. Used to be the Ontario Divorce Information Network. Now we call it ODIN, the Norse god of war, the Norse god of knowledge that pretty much covers divorce. And in the beginning, around 2018-19, we set out to just build really core processes. Those processes were really boring. And I remember talking to ODR people, because ODR, a lot of people, it's like the conclusion, we need to get to the conclusion. We just knew that if we didn't focus on the core and build from that core in family law, we were never going to be able to survive. We're not opposed to anybody that's figuring out the conclusion. We'll marry you at the end, but we just knew we had to focus on the core. And that was things like, file sharing and working between professionals, CRM, document generation, financial disclosure. I remember talking to people about financial disclosure. They'd look at me like a mule looking at a new gate, and they're just not getting it. But we knew that this was a big deal. We were dealing with tens of millions of dollars of assets at any given time. We knew that this was causing drama. It was taking 100 days to get through a process. If there was going to be domestic violence, it was happening in those first 100 days while we were waiting for financial disclosure to be done. If there was going to be drama, it was in those first 100 days. We needed to focus on that core process. Now, at the beginning, we were at a place, we were successful, we were established, but from a business model, we were running around $4,000 per client, $8,000 per file. From a mediation perspective, that's not necessarily outrageous. It just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't where we're going, especially when you're looking at people at $400 an hour. If you were to have talked to me at that time, we'd put a lot of energy into building and where we're going and a lot of talk about what it's going to be about. But by about 2020, if you'd spoken to me in January, I was pretty discouraged. I kind of wondered if we'd missed the boat. And I was seeing a lot of talk about ODR, but I didn't really see anything, certainly in Canada, certainly not in family. And then COVID happened. And we went from being the weird people on the street to the cool people on the street. We were ready. All of a sudden, people were calling us up. Frankly, February 2020, we plugged Zoom into Odin, and we were ready to go. And all of a sudden, we were able to build things that really mattered to us. COVID bought us time. And as we bought that time, we were able to start focusing on more functional services, more functional ODR services. We started spending time in virtual independent legal advice. We started spending time in our court integrations. We started spending time when it came to diagnosis and triage. It was huge, the time we were able to spend on that one. And the market started to respond to us. We saw the shift in the market. We saw that people were all of a sudden obviously used to buying their groceries online. They were working from home. They were now used to facilitating doing their banking online. We saw the market shift, the industry shift. But I think it was a little bit more, if I was to be straightforward, probably about had to rather than wanted to. By the time we'd hit the end of COVID, we had saw this really interesting thing. Our market revenue had doubled. Our client base had doubled in a year. People were responding to us. There was no glitch with our market. There was no glitch. In fact, our revenues per client instantly doubled over the next 12 months. What's also interesting about that one is the price and the expenses. The business model that we were looking at dropped in half. We were able to centralize our services. As we got to the end of COVID, we started to have to make a decision. You know, are we going to go back? Are we going to continue on? We saw a lot of people were going back to traditional models. But we had saw that the market had shifted. Even though the industry, there certainly had been a lot of work in Ontario of going a certain direction, there was a lot that were just reverting back to the ways it had done. But the market had shifted, and we knew it. And we had to make a business decision. We decided to pull the plugs. We shut down 7 locations. We centralized to 1 location. And we started spending time on building in parts of that process, which were a bigger part of that echo junction, that divorce echo junction, so that we could literally work with our clients to facilitate and to get through that process. Our clients were responding. And what was most interesting about it, and I'm quickly summarizing, is that we were seeing all of a sudden that our market was responding. The revenues were doubling one after another. The client base was doubling, but the cost of divorce was not going up. That's what was really interesting to us. We were not driving up the cost of divorce in our business model. Our business model was facilitating, and the ODR was facilitating. By the time that we're done, we've come out the other side. We have no intentions to ever go back. ODR is a full estate sustainable part of our platform. I don't know if it looks like what anybody else thinks is ODR, but this is what walks our clients through. We struggle with it. You know, is this something that we put emphasis in? Is this something we don't put emphasis in? Frankly, in the last year, we just sort of went a little bit quiet. Building technology is incredibly expensive, millions and millions of dollars. We just took this year, sort of backed off, went to the sidelines, started grabbing our market share of the market, paid off a whole bunch of bills, and are moving forward with where it is that we're going. Currently, as we get to this side, we often have to wonder now, what is it that we've done? Is it working? Is it right? Again, I'm not an academic. To be very honest, sometimes I've struggled with those governing bodies that are absolutely adamant that they're there to watch the best interests of the clients. I'm not sure that there's always not a conflict of interest there. But I do want to listen to what it is that the market's saying. Now, our goal is not revenues. I can say from day one, our goal has been family dispute resolution. But if you'll grace me, we are a process that's gone from struggling and client complaints and Google reviews. And if you'll grace me for 90 seconds, I'd just like to show you what our clients are.
So hello everyone, my name is Valentin Callipel. I'm the head of mission of the cyberjustice laboratory, and I'm very pleased to be with you today. I would like just to recall the position I have in terms of interest for the landscape of online dispute resolution in Canada. So we are mostly focusing on what we can call public projects, or how the public institution, courts, tribunals, or public body could leverage online dispute resolution into their processes to enhance access to justice. So I will try to illustrate what is happening in Canada in that matter, and with sort of a different lens than the one that was presented from CISD project and the Smart Settle. And I think all together, throughout the discussion after, we will be able to illustrate what is happening in Canada right now. So first, the Canadian landscape. Then I'd like to try to introduce the concept of the particularity of the Canadian ODR model. And I have a few discussion points I'd like to share with you. And 5 dates are, to me, quite interesting to understand what is happening currently in Canada. And something that could be sort of a singular particularity of the Canadian landscape, which is a bit different than what is happening in the US or in Europe. And I think from that point of view, it's interesting to focus on the Canadian jurisdiction. So we have experienced a 25 years journey of reimagining access to justice with technology in Canada. And I think it's really connected with what Ethan Katch and Karim Benyekhlef said at the beginning of this conference. And it started, to my point of view, in 98 here in Montreal, when Karim and his team developed the first online arbitration platform. So within the Faculty of Law of the University of Montreal. And it was a very important momentum, at least for Canada, to demonstrate that it was feasible to modelize online arbitration processes, and at that time to demonstrate that technology could be leveraged to enhance the operation and the administration of dispute resolution models. A second date is important, and I'm missing here a couple of important projects that have been conducted in the field of online dispute resolution for e-commerce, for example. But the second date for me is 2010 with the foundation of the Cyberjustice Laboratory, which was an important moment for the trajectory of ODR model in Canada, in a sense that at the Cyberjustice Laboratory, the idea inceptioned into this research center was to use the journey and the experience gathered in the field of online dispute resolution for e-commerce, and to try to bring this knowledge, technology, and experience within the field of traditional justice. How can we leverage what we have learned throughout the experience of e-commerce and online dispute resolution of consumer dispute online to enhance traditional justice system? And that was the founding idea of the Cyberjustice Laboratory. And two other elements are for me important. First, it's the big research project called Towards Cyberjustice, in which the third working group was called New Procedural Model. And I think it's important here to understand that leveraging technology, ODR, and all the toolbox of what the ODR community have been developed was an opportunity to develop new procedural models that are more adapted to the needs of judicial stakeholders, but also to the needs of citizens and access to justice. And so the work of the working group 3 from the Towards Cyberjustice project was really focusing on trying to innovate and develop new ways of addressing access to justice using ODR. So it was really connected with the justice institutions. And the third interesting element associated with these 2010 dates was the starting of the Parler project, so platform to aid for the resolution of electronic dispute online, which is the platform developed by the Cyberjustice Laboratory and which is now used by a couple of important projects throughout North America and also in Europe. And that was the inception of how can we use that technology to help for small claims project. And then this idea of how we can leverage ODR for the public bodies and courts spreads around Canada. And in 2011, in British Columbia, they launched the first administrative tribunal that used ODR to resolve dispute about residential property tax assessment. So that first step was fully interesting in terms of how the government can leverage ODR to provide better access to justice for the citizen. And the third date is also important, is 2016 and 17. And it was the creation of the Civil Resolution Tribunal in BC. And 1 year later, the launch of the Condominium Authority Tribunal, which is based on the platform Parler. And again, two of those organizations, which are administrative tribunals that were created by legislation from scratch, in a way, to address different types of disputes. In the case of the Civil Resolution Tribunal, it was at the beginning for strata disputes, which is sort of condominium disputes. And in Ontario, with the Condominium Authority Tribunal, it was a tribunal fully developed from scratch and fully online without any facility that was inception already online to become the first and single-stop shop to resolve disputes associated with condominium in Ontario. And both of those tribunals have encapsulated the key component of the online dispute resolution processes: information, negotiation, facilitation, and adjudication or decision. And a clear process was at that time demonstrated to be operative for the courts. And we will come back on the effect, the impact of those different projects. But the fifth date I'd like to call today is the creation of the Justice Bot, which for me illustrates how the Canadian jurisdiction could be innovate and trustful for the development of innovation in the field of justice. And so what is the Justice Bot? It's basically a legal guided pathway, so the information first phase of an ODR platform, which is augmented by AI to provide information for landlord and tenant board people in Quebec. And again, it was a bold project in a sense that this project that was developed at the Cyberjustice Laboratory was adopted by the administrative Quebec Housing Tribunal in Quebec. So again, a bold decision was made by the government to move into the direction of reinventing or reimagining the way to provide and deliver services to the people. So what is the Canadian ODR model? So we think at the lab that the Canadian ODR initiatives have been developed with a vision of public service, bringing government, academics, and courts together in partnerships. And here are a couple of interesting projects, which are all projects that are promoting integration of amicable methods. I'm not talking here about alternative dispute resolution means, because they are very integrated within the judicial processes, so we can talk about more hybrid proceedings. And so they are incorporating amicable methods, so negotiation, facilitation, mediation, and name it. We can add a neutral evaluation, any types of useful element to augment the options for the parties to find a solution before the judge or before the adjudicator. The second element is leveraging technologies, such as the technology illustrated by Cisde just before. Those technologies could be multiple, but they are all targeted to centralize information and free the flow of information between the parties to make sure at any point we are moving from a static paper-based process to a more interactive process, which is something that I'm quoting from Ethan Katch. And I think what is really essential with this move toward digital platform is the capacity to provide more interactive experience for the citizen. And again, the idea of ODR was to reshape the way we are offering justice to the people by moving from a sort of institutional point of view to a more citizen-centric strategy, so focusing on the needs of the user. So here you have a couple of interesting examples, and I will just illustrate a couple of them, and I know that later today the Consumer Protection Agency project that we have done with the Consumer Protection Agency in Quebec will be illustrated by Ilona. But interestingly here, I think there is maybe three elements to gather from this slide. The first one is that you have here a couple of really online administrative tribunals embedding ODR processes, so the Civil Resolution Tribunal, the Condominium Authority Tribunal in Ontario, and also the Social Justice Tribunal in Ontario, which is a new project from 2 years ago, also incorporating these four components: information, negotiation, facilitation, adjudication. And two elements are here for me important is the Nova Scotia project, which is a family law project. Could be interesting for Cisde, which is the first experiment of online dispute resolution in Canada associated with family law. And two projects are for me really important to understand that ODR could be tackle or to be reshaped, adapted to multiple types of conflicts, and in particular for labor conflicts. And when we started to work with the CNESST, which is the Health and Labor Commission here in Quebec, there were no previous experience of labor law ODR project, nor in the US, nor in Europe. So we started from scratch, but we started to develop the solution with them, and it's now working. And we also started and launched last year a project with the Human Rights Commission of Canada for the pay equity cases. So again, there is an important versatility of the domain in which ODR could be used. And again, all of those projects are publicly funded and publicly operated, which is probably for us the blueprint and the marker of what is happening in Canada. Couple of elements here I'd like to highlight to illustrate what is happening in Canada. So we are seeing something, and I don't want to prejudice with what is happening in what we can call ODR private systems, but the findings were that current private ODR platforms were not tailor-made enough or adapted to tackle access to justice issues in Canada. Most of the people don't have access to the justice system. Most of the people do not have access to the possibility to have a lawyer. So it was essential to find ways to adopt ODR within the frame of the administrative tribunals or the justice system. And also, most of the ODR private platforms at that time were not able to develop a sustainable business model to make sure they can strive and provide long-term solution for the public. So we have assisted to pioneering legislation that led to the creation of new tribunals implementing new procedural models. As I said, Civil Resolution Tribunal, Condominium Authority Tribunal. Which was important there is that those net new tribunals were able to create new ways of settling and solving disputes, which could have been more complex if they were like just implanted within existing jurisdiction. And also the ODR community here in Canada demonstrated that public ODR is considered the way of the future in the dispute resolution for low to medium intensity dispute. And on the left side of the slide, you can see the different types of disputes that are now handled through public ODR in Canada, with this very clear procedural model, legal guided pathway, negotiation, mediation, decision. We have also seen a very blooming factor in terms of the development of ODR in the public field in Canada, which was the development of governmental-wide multi-sectoral ODR programs. It was started in British Columbia, where they launched a very ambitious roadmap where they wanted to deliver multiple ODR programs for the different areas of administrative problems or civil conflicts in British Columbia. And it was quickly followed by Ontario, Saskatchewan with the e-justice program, which was really ambitious in terms of providing ODR for multiple courts, tribunals, and public bodies in Saskatchewan. And Quebec did the same with an ambitious program with a shared platform that will be available for all the public bodies in Quebec to provide information, negotiation, mediation, and adjudication for the people. Two last elements I wanted to showcase concerning the Canadian model. First, we've seen a very important investment into legal guided pathways or self-help tools. And I think it's an important question in the sense that we are seeing a shift in the role of the jurisdiction. A court or a tribunal was not before this tendency to use ODR in the position of proposing or offering information to the public. And so we see a sort of an extension or expanding of the court's jurisdiction that are now intervening earlier and better to make sure that less cases are moving from information to negotiation and finally adjudication. So this tendency to enhance the scope of intervention of courts is really important, interesting, and is also accompanied by a certain movement of clear language and all the work of the Legal Education Institute in Canada. And finally, what is interesting in Canada is that those projects are starting to have sufficient length and long experience. So years past allow us to assess the impact of the Canadian public ODR model in depth, and multiple projects are currently done in this area to try to evaluate what are the impacts of those projects for the public institutions, for the courts, tribunal, but also mainly for the citizen. That being said, there is still questions arising around the topic of ODR. And we cannot not share some of the criticism that are made towards ODR. And I think it's important to try to continue to follow the literature associated with that and the return of experience that are coming from different projects throughout Canada. So, and most of the criticism are coming from the legal professional, the legal community. Let's remember that the Civil Resolution Tribunal was challenged by the Trial Lawyers Association of British Columbia. They compete the constitutionality of this new jurisdiction, and this jurisdiction was created against, in a way, lawyers. So at the beginning of the project, it was a sort of a challenge towards a legal professional, which is something that we did not do in Ontario when the Condominium Authority Tribunal project was developed by the Ontario government. The idea was to integrate lawyers right from the beginning of the project, because this project could integrate, of course, lawyers. Also, some of the critics we see in Ontario just right after the pandemic was the digital-first approach will continue even when the pandemic is over. And this was the concern expressed by the Ontario Bar Association. The pandemic may change the way people have access to courts. And I'd like to quote two very interesting points raised by Cathy Laird, which is an Ontario administrative justice expert. It's not 2001, it's 2021, so it's not far away. She said concerning the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board ODR initiative that it may create new barriers for marginalized parties, and I think it's really important to take that into consideration, and I will come back on that. Another point she raised was for me quite interesting, associating with the side effects of ODR. The use of a single ODR platform. So basically, if you are moving from multiple places where a landlord and tenant board can occur in a province to a single one-stop shop place online where you will settle all those kind of disputes, which is a bit a solutionist approach, I would say, it can lead to a certain degree of centralization and break some existing important equilibrium. And in fact, she's noting that you do not improve access to justice by diminishing the capacity of the local legal resources that are out there to help vulnerable parties. And this critics, I've considered that is important and needs to be incorporated in the development, in the improvement of ODR platform. Because at the end, ODR projects reflect multiple realities. It's not like a copy-paste concept that you can use in Quebec, in Ontario, in Nova Scotia, just a technology that you can copy-paste. Each project is singular, particular, and need to tackle a particular reality. And particularly if you want to address problems of diverse audiences, diverse public, marginalized party cannot have the same solution as other types of public. And sometimes we may even question ourselves about the fact that shall we continue to use the same terminology to describe such diverse realities. There is multiple ODR projects. And finally, that being said, we are here to hear the criticism, but at the end it's also important to remind that the best way to evaluate the quality and the efficiency of ODR is to start from the principle of putting the public first. And I'd like to come back on the work that have been conducted by Jean-François Roberge concerning the evaluation of the sense of access to justice. At the end, those services are provided to the public, and we need to evaluate how they are experiencing this access to justice reimagination. And 78% of the user of the Parler platform with the Consumer Protection Agency considered that they have a real sense of access to justice with this solution. With Nicolas, we did an important survey with the use of virtual hearings at the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada 2 years ago. And again, the ratings are very important in terms of how those solutions are providing better access to justice for their user. And that will be my final point. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Valentin. Thank you, Darren. So it's up to you, Ernest. We had the two great presentations.
Well, okay. So we've used up a lot of the time here. I wonder if I'm going to show that video, I should sneak it in now. What do you think?
Well, it's 15 past 10, and we should stop at 10 in 15 minutes. Maybe we should leave a little time for questions. So maybe
Right.
10 minutes. Is 10 minutes okay for you?
Yeah, it's 12 minutes long, so I'll just...
Okay, 12 minutes. That's okay. No problem. Go on.
Okay. So let's see where this is here. So we've been talking about the steps, going from, the beginning of a dispute to the end, and you start with, gathering information, and there's negotiation and mediation, and finally, if you can't solve it by that time, then there's adjudication. And Smart Settle focuses in the middle, basically the negotiation and mediation part. You can think of Smart Settle as an automated mediator on the internet, and it really focuses on the negotiation part in more detail than probably other systems that you might be familiar with. So let's just go ahead with that. Let me know if you don't hear the sound right away.
This presentation is for those that already believe in the power of mediation to deliver more party control and more satisfaction. Continue watching to see how the Smart Settle process can enhance that power and even turn
We don't see the presentation.
We don't see the
Ernest.
video. Maybe you need to share your screen.
Yeah, share your screen.
1989 at Cornell University. Thiessen.
Yeah, it's always the same, right? Doing ODR conference.
Share the screen here. Okay.
This is the...
I hate technology.
Yeah. I love divorce and
I love
and
divorce. I hate
technology.
technology. Yeah.
To deliver more party control and more satisfaction. Continue watching to see how the Smart Settle process can enhance that power and even turn adversaries into collaborators. In 1989 at Cornell University, Thiessen's major advisor Pete Lux challenged him to tackle the huge gap between engineers and decision makers. How can decision makers be more efficient? By taking better account of the work of engineers. Thiessen's response became the subject of his doctoral dissertation, which won him praise from the top thinkers in the field of negotiation systems analysis, including Professor Emeritus Howard Rafa at Harvard University, who preferred Thiessen's solution to that of Nobel laureate John Nash. However, subsequent research showed that both solutions were impractical and therefore incomplete. Dr. Thiessen continued that research, and today decades later, we have a secure, neutral site, which you can imagine as a virtual negotiating table, with a suite of 9 algorithms ready to power conflict resolution of all shapes and sizes. Each algorithm is like an intelligent recipe, with a set of instructions to combine prescribed ingredients in a certain order and in a certain way. The first task of negotiators is to build a single negotiating framework, like the final agreement, except for blanks representing unresolved issues. Preference analysis discovers how parties become satisfied on each issue, so that Smart Settle can generate intelligent suggestions. Visual blind bidding allows parties to secretly accept those suggestions, and fairly sharing the overlap results in a deal. Behind the scenes, Smart Settle rewards collaborative behavior, also known as smallest last move. More on that later, which makes it counterproductive to hold back and results in increased settlement rates. If there's a small gap remaining, then the small gap closer comes into play, again rewarding collaborative behavior. In case of no agreement in final session, parties can agree to the expert mutual decider, which guarantees a collaborative outcome. In multivariate problems, normalization proceeds maximize the minimum gain in order to harvest and fairly distribute any hidden value. To illustrate these algorithms, we've adapted a true story about a negotiation between a teacher and a farmer to also involve a baker. Farmer advertised 100 pumpkins for sale. Teacher and baker each want all of them, but farmer is now willing to only sell half of them. Their objective is a formal final agreement. This 3-party negotiation shouldn't be that hard, but somehow discussions go off the rails. They each hire a lawyer, and it doesn't get any easier. They might be heading for court. Of course, you know that there's a better way. They could hire a mediator. The power of that mediation would allow more party control and produce a more satisfactory outcome. We're about to illustrate how that power of mediation can be significantly enhanced by employing a perfectly neutral, super intelligent mediator at the Smart Settle Secure Neutral site to deliver even more party control and even more satisfaction. The first neutral site algorithm is the single negotiating framework. A single negotiating framework is like a final agreement, except for blanks that represent unresolved issues. Price and quantity are the obvious issues, but a skilled facilitator soon discovers that there is plenty of room in this case to create options for mutual gain. Teacher is interested only in the shells for a Halloween party. Baker wants only the pulp for pumpkin pie at a large wedding. And farmer will be thrilled if he gets all the seeds back for next year's planting. Now, you can already guess the optimal solution, and it's unlikely that a negotiation like this would need a sophisticated collaboration system, but picture a more complicated scenario. Watch how we explain the algorithms in this simple scenario, and imagine how they can be applied to complex problems in your real world. The single negotiating framework evolves, and now also has blanks for the pull, seeds, shells, and delivery. Around these blanks is everything that the parties already agree about. Building the framework in a collaborative way, leaving a blank for each issue, gives the parties opportunity to build or restore relationships. A skilled facilitator encourages patience, while they elicit a range for each issue. The key here is for the parties to understand that the issues will be solved later, all together as one package. The next step is comprehensive preference analysis, where the negotiation problem is modeled and party preferences are represented. Only the neutral site knows how each party becomes satisfied on each issue, and with that knowledge, it will be able to generate intelligent suggestions in a process called visual blind bidding. To appreciate the magic of visual blind bidding, imagine first how this negotiation might go otherwise. Here we see teacher and farmer negotiating the traditional way and reaching an impasse after several rounds. Teacher said, "This is as far as I'll go," and farmer said the same thing. Not only did they have a face-saving problem, Baker was also in the mix. A solution was possible, but they couldn't find it. The Smart Settle process virtually eliminates the tedious negotiation dance that characterizes traditional negotiations replaces it with visual blind bidding. Visual blind bidding anticipates the existence of a zone of potential agreement. The ZOPA is the overlap of the maximum willingness to concede by each party. This illustration looks like the negotiations only between two parties about one issue, but we're showing it this way just for the sake of simplicity. Baker is here too, and we're actually negotiating all the issues together as a package. Visual blind bidding allows parties to make both visible proposals and secret bids in a series of sessions. If they don't reach a deal in one session, then they continue to another session. Here we see the secret bids of the parties coming close to agreement. Teacher's collaborative behavior put her in the ZOPA right away, while Farmer was still holding back. Teacher declares final session and makes her final secret bid. Farmer also makes his final secret bid, and there is an overlap. At this point, one might be tempted to split the difference, but that's a bad idea. Research has shown that split the difference has a chilling effect on negotiations because it gives parties an incentive to hold back. Instead, Smart Settle shares the overlap in a special way that discourages holding back. By dividing the overlap in the same ratio as the final bids, Teacher gets 2 units and Farmer gets 1 unit. Teacher is rewarded for her collaborative behavior. This algorithm is also known as smallest last move. Did that look too easy? It's true. Sometimes there is no overlap and a small gap remains. It would be a pity not to settle, but what to do? Should we simply split the difference? Again, that's a bad idea because it rewards the party that holds back. The small gap closer first invites each party to specify a secret extension. If the extensions are sufficient, then the gap is simply closed using the smallest last move algorithm. It may happen that the gap is too big for the small gap closer. In that case, the parties can resort to the expert neutral decider. 3 expert neutrals, agreed by the parties, will look at the information provided to them, and each will independently select from alternatives given to them, the one they feel is most fair. The middle selection is deemed fair, and then the party who is closest to fair is favored, again by using the smallest last move rule to divide the gap on their side of fair. Everything we've shown you so far is called visual blind bidding. It works for single issue negotiations between 2 parties, or the most complicated negotiations between any number of parties. In the more complicated negotiations, the Smart Settle multivariate visual blind bidding process adds another algorithm that harvests hidden value, which is illustrated by this plot of the satisfaction of Teacher versus the satisfaction of Farmer. Teacher would like a solution at the top left, and Farmer would like a solution at the bottom right. When we plot the minimum satisfaction of each party, the remaining area at the top right is the ZOPA, bounded by the efficiency frontier, which represents the set of best attainable solutions for all the parties. With preferences well represented, each party is immediately aware of the rating to themselves of each new package. They are unaware of what those packages look like to the other party, but they can see that the initial proposal from the other party is not acceptable to themselves. The stars we see here are packages that represent decisions on all the issues. Any one of these packages could complete the single negotiating framework. Since the neutral site knows how each party becomes satisfied, it can generate suggestions that are interesting to everyone. This works just like the visual blind bidding process shown in the previous slides, and all the algorithms we've shown apply to this process. If the parties secretly accept the same packages, then Smart Settle will declare one of them as a baseline by rewarding collaborative behavior. The last 2 steps are fairness enhancing normalization and maximize the minimum gain to harvest any hidden value and generate a fair solution on the efficiency frontier. The improvements delivered by this process in cases like this tend to be 10 to 20%, so this process is well worth your while in a high-value negotiation. If we bring Baker back into the picture, you need to imagine a 3rd dimension in which the efficiency frontier is a surface, and everything works much the same way. This process is not much more complicated for many parties than it is for 2. Would you like to experience the enhanced power of mediation? Learn more and practice with a robot at smart settle resolutions